What is up? It's the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 40. Emmy Nixon, my co-host, and I am your host, Michael Ween. We are back after a long hiatus of 77 days. It's been a while. Today we have a packed podcast for you. I know it's a crazy time we're living in with the coronavirus and all this, and all the sports are kind of halted. Nothing's really going on, but we do have some stuff to get to. We're going to hand out NBA season awards. We're going to talk winners and losers of NFL free agency, and then we have a fun / informative mock draft game that we'll do at the end. So let's get to it. Without further ado, let's hand out some NBA awards. Emmy, you can start us off with, I guess, MVP.
Yeah. First and foremost, I hope all y'all are safe out there.
Yep.
Staying inside, all that, sticking to the system. You know what I'm saying? Okay. MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Right.
I think this is a no-brainer at this point. He's been the best player on the best team for the entirety of the season. He had in his last game before this break, I think it was the third to last game before this break. He had 41, 20, and 6 in 35 minutes. Least amount of minutes for a 40, 20, and 5 game in NBA history. So he's just doing this kind of stuff routinely, and I think we're just taking this kind of thing for granted. He deserves this award.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, what LeBron's doing in his 17th season, or what he was doing in his 17th season at age 35 is pretty incredible. But Giannis is the best player on the best team, like you mentioned. He's averaging pretty much 30 points, 14 rebounds, about 6 assists, a steal, and a block while shooting 54% from the field while only playing 31 minutes a night. And if you take his player efficiency rating for this season of 31.63, that would rank 7th all-time among all players in NBA history. So a pretty incredible stat right there, and I think it encapsulates everything he's doing for what was the best team record-wise in the league. So I think we agree there. I think we can move on to the next award I have on my list is Coach of the Year.
Yeah, you can go first with this one.
I went with Nick Nurse. If you look at the composition of their team, Toronto, you look at losing a player like Kawhi Leonard, who obviously brought them a title last season. If you look at their record comparison through 64 games, last year they were 46-18, and this year they are 46-18 as it stands, second in the Eastern Conference standings, and that is without Kawhi Leonard. And the most amazing thing to me is what Nick Nurse is able to get out of the guys he has, because if you look at the Raptors, they've been hurt a lot. Total player games injured, 216. That's the 6th most in the NBA this year. You look at key players who've missed a lot of games. Kyle Lowry's missed 12. Van Vliet has missed 16. Norman Powell, 20. Pascal Siakam has missed 12. Serge Ibaka's missed 14 games. And Marc Gasol has missed 27 games with injury. So, I just look at it, and without Kawhi Leonard and with all these injuries, he's able to do the same thing. They're great defensively. They play their asses off, and they're second in the Eastern Conference. I think, what do you think?
Yeah, it's that, everything you said, and on top of that, it's just the storyline. Losing one of the best defenders in NBA history and coming back the next season and still being dominant on the defensive end.
Right.
And you see the creativity he's able to he's able to have with his schemes. You saw him in the NBA Finals go to a box and one and experiment with different things. I think he is the best coach in the league right now.
I mean, I probably have to agree with you. What he's doing with what he has, given all their injuries, is pretty incredible. And you don't just lose a player like Kawhi and just not fall off at all. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Right. Exactly.
And I think they had a streak early this season where they won I think it was 15 something straight games.
Yeah, 15 games
which is pretty incredible as well. So
yeah.
I think it was a franchise record for them in terms of games won in a row in the regular season. So, but we'll move on to Defensive Player of the Year. I'll let you go first on this one.
Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going with Anthony Davis to win this award. I think what he's been able to do, he's on the team with the best defensive rating in the league, or a team that had it for most of the season. I'm not sure if they maintained it, but just watching him on the floor, just off the eye test itself, you can just see how much of an impact he's able to have. And also, he's been such a great defender for a long time. I feel like this award is long overdue, and he was finally able to stay healthy this year. I think this is I think this is a fair reward for him.
This is the third one. I agree with you. Anthony Davis, Defensive Player of the Year. If you look at his just pure defensive statistics and where they rank in the NBA this season, 2.5 blocks per game. That's tied second with Brook Lopez. And as far as steals go, 1.5 steals per game, tied 13th, which is pretty good for considering he's a 7-footer. And 7-footers don't typically get too many steals. And you mentioned he's he's at the center of a great Lakers defense, which ranks third in opponent points per game, only allowing 106.9. And I guess they were first in defensive rating, but now they're second.
They were, but I don't think they are.
Now they're second. They dropped to second, 105.6. So he's just the centerpiece of a really, really good Lakers team and a really, really good defensive team. And his defensive statistics speak for themselves. So with that being said, and now that we agree on that, Rookie of the Year, I thought this was the easiest one to pick. It's obviously going to be Ja Morant. You look at his statistics, 17.5 points per game, about 7 assists per game, 3.5 rebounds per game, almost a steal per game, shooting 49% from the field and 37% from three. And the most amazing thing about this is he had the Grizzlies in position, or he has the Grizzlies, if the NBA season resumes, he has the Grizzlies in position to get that 8 seed in the Western Conference. They're currently one game below 500, 32-33, and have way outperformed any expectations anybody had for the Grizzlies before the season started. Now, when you talk about Zion, he's obviously probably been the best rookie who stepped on the floor this season. I mean, his stats speak for themselves. 23.5 points, 7 rebounds, shooting 58% from the field. But you have to play more games than he has in order to win the award. In fact, no player has won Rookie of the Year when playing fewer than 50 games in the season. And the fewest games to be played by a Rookie of the Year was 50, and that was done by Patrick Ewing in 1985. So it is called Rookie of the Year for a reason. You have to play for most of the year, and that's something Zion hasn't done. But Zion, given his God-given ability and just how explosive he is and all the skills he has, he'll have plenty of chances to win more awards in the future. So,
Exactly.
and I think if you ask him, he would agree that the award should go to John Morant.
Yeah. John Morant, when you look at just the way he has been able to make his teammates better,
Right.
I think that's been the most impressive thing this season. If you're talking about a true point guard, a guy that can run the offense, get everybody their shots, keep everybody going, he's been able to do that perfectly as a rookie. So if he just works out good things in his jump shot, he'll be a perennial all-star for sure. And he might even be one without one.
Yeah. And you mentioned making your teammates better. If he didn't make his teammates better, the Grizzlies wouldn't be in the position they are right now as that 8 seed in the Western Conference. So,
yeah, exactly.
He's been the, I guess, leader of that,
young squad.
Yeah. So
he's led the charge for sure.
We'll move on to, there's 2 more awards. We have to give out Most Improved Player and Sixth Man of the Year. I know there are a lot of good candidates for Most Improved Player. You have Brandon Ingram. You could even, I guess, put, I don't know if you did, but you could put Luka Doncic into this conversation if you wanted.
Yeah.
There are Montrezl Harrell. I mean, there are some guys. I went with Bam Adebayo. You look at what he's doing for a Heat team that I don't know where exactly their position in the playoff standings, but they were up there in the East. 16 points, 10.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, and 1 steal while shooting 57% from the field. He's recorded 39 double-doubles this year. He leads the team, and he's ranked 7th in the NBA in that category. He only had 11 double-doubles all of last year. And I know he's getting more playing time, but at the same time, you know, that is a pretty big difference. And he is on pace, or was on pace, to become only the 6th player in NBA history to average 15 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. And his company would be Larry Bird, Kevin Garnett, who, by the way, congratulations, got the call to be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame today, Chris Webber, DeMarcus Cousins, and the one, the only Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's some pretty good company right there. And I understand there are plenty of good candidates out there, but I went with Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, I went with Bam as well.
Really? Okay.
Something about Bam, like, the thing that really stuck out to me is that he was a guy that was just on the bench, didn't get much playing time.
Right.
And then he was able to, like, still stay on the same team in the same situation and then make the most out of it and make himself into a first-time All-Star. With the situation with Brandon Ingram,
yeah,
he switched teams, so a lot more shots are going to be going his just naturally.
Uh-huh.
And then with Luka, it's hard to give this award to a second-year player.
Yeah.
Because you're just naturally thinking they're going to improve.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like he was the best candidate.
Right. Same here. So I guess if there's nothing else to be said there, we're moving pretty quickly through these awards because we have a lot of NFL stuff that we have to get through, and I don't want this to go too long. So for time's sake, we'll go to our last award. It's the Sixth Man of the Year, and here I went with Dennis Schroeder of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Not much to say, I guess. It's just, if you look at, he's averaging career highs in points per game. He's averaging 19 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists on 47% shooting, and 38% from 3, and he leads all players in bench scoring. That's really all I have to say about him.
Right. I chose Dennis Schroeder as well.
Wow. Okay.
If you look at the way the Thunder are built as a team, he's just an essential part of that team, and they wouldn't be what they are without him. because he really runs that bench unit really, really well. And to be fair, I'm also just tired of Lou Williams winning it.
Yeah, yeah, that was something else I had to consider. So those are our NBA season awards. I was pretty surprised. We agreed on all 6
that's crazy.
awards, which is pretty surprising to me. But I guess we'll see what happens, and we'll see.
Great minds think alike.
It'll be interesting to see if. Hopefully it does, but it'll be interesting to see if we get to see at least maybe an NBA playoffs or something. But given the circumstances, obviously you have to take the precautions, follow what the health professionals are saying and all that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure.
So 15 minutes in, that was pretty quick and efficient. Let's move on to NFL free agency. A lot to discuss here. We're going to, we picked 3 to 5 winners and losers. I had picked 5 each. I don't know what you did. And then I'm going to give them a grade and tell them why I think they're a winner or a loser. So I guess we can just alternate. If you want to start us off with your winners.
Right. My winners were the 49ers, the Colts, the Cardinals, the Ravens, and the Chargers. And starting off with the 49ers, I gave them a A-.
Okay.
If you look at what they did, they traded DeForest Buckner, able to get a first-round pick, the 13th overall pick, and able to clear cap space to keep 3 key defensive guys, 3 cheap guys.
Right.
Eric Armstead, Jimmy Ward, and Ronald Blair. And then also that move also puts money aside to be able to give George Kittle an extension. So that they had a really solid offseason.
Very important.
And it'll be interesting to see what they do with that 13th pick.
Do you want to continue, or do you want me to run through mine?
Yeah, run through yours first. I think we're going to alternate here.
My first big winner is pretty obvious. It's the Arizona Cardinals. They get an A+ for me. The trade, I mean, I guess we'll get into it more with Houston later. But the trade for, I think, maybe the best receiver in the NFL in DeAndre Hopkins, is great in itself. And to only give up a second-round pick this year, a fourth-round pick next year, and to get rid of that bad David Johnson contract, all in one, to get DeAndre Hopkins, was very nice for me. And they also signed some, I don't know their names, but they signed a linebacker and maybe an edge rusher. I don't know. But I liked all their moves that they made. The biggest one of which was acquiring DeAndre Hopkins from the Houston Texans, who we'll talk about it a little later. So do you want to go next?
Right. And let's be honest, if you get DeAndre Hopkins without even giving up a first-round pick, it doesn't matter what your other moves are.
Yeah, exactly.
You're already a better team.
Right. Way better team.
So, yeah, they made some really solid moves. I like where they're going. That team is solid. My next winner is the Indianapolis Colts. They signed Phillip Rivers, and obviously they traded for DeForest Buckner. I like that move. I give them an A-. They didn't make many flashy moves. They had a lot of money, obviously, in free agency. But I like that they're using their money wisely and not just throwing it everywhere and making impulse signings. We'll get to that later with a loser. But they were able to sign DeForest Buckner as soon as they got him, and then they re-signed tackle Catanzaro to keep that line intact. That's one of the strengths of their team.
Right. Very important there. I have the next on my list is the New Orleans Saints. I really liked what they did. They obviously brought back Drew Brees to play quarterback. They upgraded their offensive weapons. They got that number 2 receiver and Emmanuel Sanders for pretty cheap to go with Michael Thomas. And they also got a reliable safety piece in Malcolm Jenkins from the Eagles. I like what he brings to their team, some leadership. I don't know. I just like their moves. I don't think they did anything too drastic. I think they were able to spend their money in the right places. They didn't spend too much on any of their signings. They brought back their Hall of Fame All-Pro quarterback in Drew Brees, and they're going to be even better next year, given that their defense keeps on getting better and that they upgraded their offensive weapons by getting a guy like Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, those are some solid moves. My next team is the Las Vegas Raiders.
Okay.
I had to catch myself there. They went right where their weakness was to improve that defense. They signed linebackers Corey Littleton and Nick Kwiatkowski. Nick Kwiatkowski from the Chicago Bears, solid young player. They also signed Malik Collins, and I didn't like the Jason Witten move, but at the very least, it is a locker room presence, veteran presence, and they already have their starting tight end Darren Walker, so I feel like that's a solid move, and also I like the move to bring in Marcus Mariota. At the very least, if Derek Carr starts playing bad, at least you have a backup plan, a young guy that has some experience.
Okay. Next on my list, I have the Denver Broncos as a big winner in this free agency. I graded them a B+. I really liked what they did. They basically, the Titans basically gave them Pro Bowl defensive tackle Jarrell Casey, who will replace Derek Wolfe on that interior defensive line. They only gave up a 7th-round pick to get him. And then, on top of that, they traded for Pro Bowl cornerback A.J. Boye from the Jaguars to go opposite of who's the corner. I know Chris Harris left. They have another corner there, but I really like that move. And then I like the signing of Melvin Gordon. I think it will give a young quarterback like Drew Lock an extra weapon. I think it was more of a luxury rather than a need. So
really need.
Yeah, they didn't really need him, but I mean, I think it'll be good. I think him and what's his name?
Philip Lindsay.
Yeah, Philip Lindsay. They go well together. They'll be definitely a dynamic duo in the backfield. I like what they have on the outside. I think they could use to maybe draft a receiver or two in the draft, but I like Cortland Sutton on the outside. I think he can be a number one, maybe even top number two. We'll see how that plays out. But I liked all their moves. I just think the only reason I didn't give them an A is because I think you could have spent the money you spent on Melvin Gordon, even though I think it's money well spent. I think there were some other places you probably could have used that money to go elsewhere because you already have a very good running back option in Philip Lindsay.
Right. But I definitely think they are going in the right direction.
Right.
I think you're right about the money going to Melvin Gordon. I think it could have gone to maybe an offensive tackle.
Yeah.
They definitely need some offensive line help. But, I mean, yeah, overall, it's a pretty good free agency. My next team was Arizona, but since you already covered them, I'm just going to move on to Baltimore.
Okay.
The Ravens, they obviously traded for Calais Campbell. And I just like that they're able to re-sign their key guys.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do much, but keeping that core intact.
Uh-huh.
I think that's the most important thing. Franchise tagged edge rusher Matt Judon, and I hopefully that pass rush can be a lot better next year.
I really like what their front office has done. They've done a pretty amazing job at keeping that core together, and then whether it's through the draft, through trade, or free agency signings, they do a pretty good job at getting guys that fit their system. So, even though I'm a Pittsburgh fan, I got to give Baltimore credit for what they've been able to do, and like how they keep their guys together. I know you were going to mention this team, the Los Angeles Chargers. They're my last winner I have. I gave them a B. They didn't do anything like too outstanding. They did lose Phillip Rivers, but I think they'll probably either draft a quarterback. I think they have like the 6th pick in the draft. Maybe if someone they like ends up there, like a Justin Herbert, or maybe even a Tua Tagovailoa, depending on how that works out. But we'll get to the draft later. I did like their moves. I think they needed offensive line help, and they got it. They got Brian Bulaga from the Green Bay Packers and acquired through trade with the Panthers all-pro offensive guard Trey Turner. So I like they get offensive line help on the interior and on the outside with a guard and a tackle. They also added some talent to that very talented defense. They got Pro Bowler Linval Joseph from the Vikings to go on the interior of that defensive line with Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa. I really like that move. And then they brought in Chris Harris Jr., a veteran cornerback who will go well in that secondary with Derwin James and the other, Casey Hayward. So
yeah, right.
I really like this Chargers team.
Secondary now.
I think it's all going to depend on obviously that quarterback position, but we'll see what happens with that.
I think they need to go get Cam Newton because this team is in a position to win now, and you don't want to miss that window just because you didn't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
Houston made this mistake a few years ago. They had a win now period where their roster was elite, and then it just fell off, and then once they got Deshaun Watson, it wasn't even on the same level.
Right. I did have one more winner. It's Tampa Bay. I guess for obvious reasons. Getting Tom Brady, giving him all the weapons they have, and then in addition to that, keeping all their core defensive pieces. Shaquille Barrett, very important franchise tag for them. I would like to see them get a long-term deal with him done. He led the league in sacks last year with 19.5. That was major for them to do. Retaining Ndamukong Suh, still a very good interior defensive line player. They've always had, I feel like Tampa Bay's always had very good interior defensive line play. Ndamukong Suh, Gerald McCoy, all those guys. And then they have an aging defensive end in Jason Pierre-Paul, but I think he can still give you good production. So, and I'll get to the Buccaneers later because I did draft for them. So that'll be interesting. But that was my other winner. Do you have any other things to mention before we move on to?
It's just the Bucs are such an interesting team. Oh man, with people underrate that defense just because Jameis Winston. Think about how many turnovers he had last year. He had 40. Think of how much more they were on the field compared to other defenses.
They were put in.
I think they actually are a good defense.
They are a good defense. I agree. I think people really don't understand. People who really don't watch football or don't know the game, they don't really understand that those 30 interceptions, that's 30 extra possessions that the defense was on the field. In addition to all the fumbles and all that stuff. I think And you get tired, there's injuries pile up. A bunch of factors factor into that. I do think they could use a couple more pieces, but that doesn't mean that, they're a bad defense. They're a good defense, and they have potential to get better. So with that being said, let's move on to losers.
This is where it gets fun, people.
This is where it gets fun.
I actually have a lot more prepared for the losers.
I only did 4 losers, but I guess we can kind of go the same way.
My first loser is the Chicago Bears.
That's funny. That's my first loser as well. But go ahead.
Okay. They threw money down the drain signing Jimmy Graham, who hasn't been good in years.
Mm-hmm.
And they also signed scheme misfit Robert Quinn for a 3-4 that's just not going to work. He's not going to work as an outside linebacker. He's not a D tackle. I don't know what they're thinking there. They re-signed an aging Danny Trevathan when they had a better option in Kwiatkowski on the roster, and they let him walk, obviously. And I feel like that was a big mistake. He's a younger option, and he's on the rise,
Yeah.
And then they made it clear that they weren't sold on Mitchell Trubisky, which is fair enough, but they ended up taking on Nick Foles. But they obviously restructured the contract, which made it a little better, but I feel like there were better options out there than Nick Foles.
Everything you said is spot on. I agree. I gave him a C. First of all, signing Jimmy Graham didn't make any sense. You gave him 2 years, $16 million, and my Steelers got Eric Ebron for less than that, which was pretty surprising. There were better options out there at tight end than Jimmy Graham. And then, I don't hate the Nick Foles move. I don't hate any of their moves, which is why I gave him a C. But again, giving up a fourth round pick for Nick Foles, who signed a 4-year, $88 million deal. We all know the massive deal he signed with $50 million guaranteed. I think paying him $15 million, and $20 million over the next 3 years if he stays, I think you could have gotten maybe a Cam Newton who's better than Nick Foles when healthy, and even maybe a Jameis Winston at that same price. So it's not a horrible move, but at the same time, like you said, there were better, I think, options out there, and you probably could have gotten at least a Cam.
Even a Marcus Mariota.
Yeah,
I feel like that would have been a good fit as well.
Exactly. So there were better options. Nothing I hated. I think they can find a role for Robert Quinn. I think that defense is still really good.
Right.
But, just some of the moves and the logistics of those moves didn't really make sense to me. So I'll go next with my next loser. Again, it's kind of the same situation with Tennessee. I didn't hate anything that they did. I think signing quarterback Ryan Tannehill and franchise tagging Derrick Henry after that, monster playoff run were very necessary moves. But I didn't like what they did with Jarrell Casey, basically just auctioning him off to Denver for a 7th round pick, like I mentioned earlier. And then they did lose a lot of those veteran players. Offensive tackle Jack Conklin, he went to Cleveland. They lost Cameron Wake. They lost very reliable tight end Delaney Walker. They lost Dion Lewis. I just didn't like. I think you got to keep some of those core guys together. Obviously, they can address some of those positions through the draft. But nothing I love, but also nothing I hated. That's just my opinion on the Titans.
Right. I agree with all that, for sure. It's definitely good to keep some of those guys around,
right?
Especially having such a successful season. Keeping that chemistry going, that's a big thing.
Right.
my next loser is the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
This is just where the dysfunction within that organization really shows, because they were making a lot of good moves. They were in the right direction. They trended up the entire season, and then they go out in the off season now and they overpay Byron Jones and Kyle Van Noy. I just don't like impulse signings. I feel like they signed Byron Jones off of a lot of name value. As a fan, I've seen the way he plays, and he's not worth that money. And they signed Eric Flowers. I don't know if you know who that is, but he played for the Giants a few years ago. He was their first round pick, but he's not very good. And he's there to be a starter. So
yeah, I agree with that. I think they overpaid those players. They are good players, but I think there were better options at cheaper prices. I do like where the general direction that team is going, given they're probably going to get their next quarterback in the draft, probably Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert. I do like Brian Flores. He, won. I think Miami won like 5 of their last 6 games. With that team, that's pretty amazing in itself. I think he's going to get the most out of his players. And I like the general direction they're going. But as you said, money could have been better spent. And that's what free agency is all about. That leads me to the Rams. I think I didn't like what they did. I gave them a C-. Releasing Pro Bowl running back Todd Gurley, even though he wasn't the same all-pro guy he was a couple years ago. You acquire a $20.5 million dead cap hit for next season. I don't like that. I think you probably could have at least found some trade for him before you released him. And then I didn't like losing versatile linebacker Corey Littleton. I think he was really good in pass coverage and really spearheaded that defense in the middle. And then I think Dante Fowler ended up getting overpaid, but I think you probably could have tried to re-sign him as well. I just didn't like a lot of the things they did. Again, they don't have a first-round pick, I don't think. They were strapped. They were strapped for cap space. I think they only have $3 million. So I guess that's understandable, but at the same time, you didn't have to acquire that cap hit. You could have found a trade for a player like Todd Gurley, and I think, it was kind of a no-win situation for the Rams this year, given all the players that they've gone out and gotten in the past. Now they're having to pay them all, and I guess that's understandable, but I just didn't like some of their moves.
Yeah, I agree. With Todd Gurley, just looking at it in the general sense, that's a loss for all running backs. Seeing him get cut after that big contract a few years ago, that's a huge blow. The value of running backs, obviously, it keeps dropping, and stuff like that. It's not helping their case,
I mean, it's not the fact that they got rid of Todd Gurley. I would be fine if they maybe had traded him and got assets for it, because running backs are pretty expendable these days. You can find good running backs on trees, but it's like I guess they didn't really have much cap space anyway, and I guess they were willing to take on the cap hit, which I guess is fine, but I don't know. I would have eventually, I think, found a trade for him. But I think the biggest loss for them was Corey Littleton.
Yeah, I agree. He was really big for them.
Yeah. But we can move on. Who do you have?
The Houston Texans.
Yeah. Same here.
All I wrote down for the Texans is Texans are trash in capital letters.
I wrote down F for their grade, and I said no explanation needed. So
Right. It's oh my goodness. And on top of trading DeAndre Hopkins, they turn around and they overpay Randall Cobb, a slot receiver.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
I like Randall Cobb. He's solid, but
right, he is.
I'm pretty sure he's on the wrong side of 30.
Mm-hmm.
And you pair him, who's on the wrong side of 30, and I guess he's a number 2, probably more of a number 3 receiver, with a guy like Will Fuller, who has, we've seen his potential, but who has very well noted injury problems. And David Johnson taking on it all doesn't really make any sense to me. There really doesn't need to be an explanation. I don't know who. I mean, I guess it's Bill O'Brien who's running their front office. I think he needs to go sooner than later.
He really does. Like that trade should have warranted
automatic firing. Exactly. If you're not I don't know. Is that all you have? That's all I have for my losers.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay.
Well, shout out to Prayal Gorgonti. I'm sorry for your loss, mate. I know you're hurting out there.
I went through it with Antonio Brown, but there's a difference because he was causing problems, like legitimate problems within the Steelers locker room.
Right, exactly.
And he had basically gone insane, and he still is. And but at least we had a reason for trading him. And now look at him, he's not even in the league. With Hopkins, it's he wasn't causing problems. He's not a diva. He's basically, I think, the best receiver in the league. I mean, there was nothing to justify giving him away. And not just giving him away, but basically giving him away for a bag of baked Lays and a pack of gum.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically what they did.
It's unexplainable. Let's just move on. I don't even want to talk about it.
All right. So, 42 minutes in. Now, for those of you who are going to tune into this podcast, once it is on YouTube, it can be found on Spotify. It will be found on Apple Podcasts. But for those of you who love the NFL and who are tuning into this podcast, I guarantee you this is going to be your favorite part of the podcast. I guess we can call it the NFL mock draft simulation game or the NFL GM game.
Yeah, I like GM game.
Okay, we'll call it the GM game. So basically what Emmy and I did is we found this website where you can simulate mock drafts online, and you can pick teams that you want to draft for. And so basically what we did is we picked 4 teams each, different teams. I have the Panthers, Cardinals, Buccaneers, and obviously my favorite team, the Steelers. And Emmy has...
I have the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos, and obviously Dallas Cowboys.
Okay, so we each have 4 teams. And basically what we did is the website simulates the mock draft, and then when one of your teams comes up to pick, you have to make a selection for them. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go team by team, and I guess we're going to alternate, and we're going to go through the picks that we made for that team. And then we're going to do some, I guess, analysis / explanation as to why we made those picks. So, with all that being said, let's get started. I'll let you go first with your first team.
All right, my first team was the LA Chargers.
Okay.
They went 5-11 last year. They got the 7th pick in the draft. With the 7th pick, I I picked Isaiah Simmons, linebacker, 6'4", 240 pounds. He has the fastest 40 time by a linebacker in the last 14 years with 4.39. Just a freak athlete. You can plug him in, and the Chargers are a team that has really prided themselves on their defensive versatility with their guys. Guys like Derwin James, you can plug them in different places in the secondary. Here's another player that they have, and they can plug him in different places. You can put him in as an edge rusher. He's got enough size and speed to be able to rush the quarterback, blitz, cover in zone. He can do it all. So to me, I feel like this was a no-brainer. If you look at linebackers in the past few years, what they've been able to do, with the difference that they're able to make on teams. If you look at the Steelers, what Devin Bush was able to do this year, he goes in there. Obviously, there was other factors as well, but
right.
It's not a coincidence. He goes in there, and immediately they're one of the elite defenses in the league. So I think he'll give them a good toughness, and he's the kind of player that will really elevate the culture of a franchise. So with that, I'll move on. 37th pick, second round. I'm picking J.K. Dobbins, running back out of Ohio State. He basically fell into my lap. He's a workhorse back, and he can just replace Melvin Gordon right away. Obviously, you have Austin Eckler. He's a really solid back, but I feel like J.K. Dobbins, at least he'll have a second option in the running back room in case Eckler gets hurt. Things happen, So I feel like it's important to have some options in the running back room, have a pool of runners. 71st pick, third round, I picked Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
Here's a guy that you'll be hard pressed to find a guy that has had more ups and downs throughout his college career than Jalen Hurts. He's a high character guy. He's going to work hard. You'll know that for sure. And if you just sit him down for a couple of years, let him learn the playbook, let him learn the system, and then maybe in a couple of years you'll be able to throw him in there. And then he's a physical freak. You got to give him that. And if he can just work on his accuracy, I feel like he has potential. He didn't put his best foot forward in the playoff game, obviously, against who was it against? It was against, was it Ohio State? No, it was against Alabama, I think. No.
I don't know.
It was Ohio State. No. I can't even remember. It was a long time ago. But, yeah, there's my pick. 112th pick, I picked Michael Pittman Jr. out of USC. Possession receiver, 6'4", 220. Solid athleticism. I think the reason I picked the wide receiver really is just because that wide receiver room in LA, it's really lacking outside of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. So you need to be able to have a third guy to be able to throw to on a third down or something like that. 151st pick. This is going to be the last pick. I chose Hakeem Adeniji out of Kansas. He's an offensive tackle, 315 pounds. His weakness is footwork, but he has a solid frame. I feel like he'll be able to have to develop him. There's my LA Chargers draft. Shout out to Daniel Beck. You're the reason I did the Chargers.
Okay. My first team I'm going to do is the Carolina Panthers, who have the 7th pick. I think the Chargers had the 6th pick. But regardless, I had a really... And we're picking the same players, but that's because there's different... we're doing different draft simulations. And
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And so it depended on, I guess, who was available in your specific in your specific simulation. But the Panthers, they do have a lot of picks. I'll try to go as quick as I can. I had a really weird simulation with the 7th pick. I found myself with cornerback out of Ohio State, Jeffrey Okudah, at the 7th pick. I know that's pretty crazy. If you don't know a lot about Okudah, he's basically the best, hands down, cornerback in this draft class. I'm going to get to his scouting profile. Here we go, real quick. Let's see. He ran 4.48 40 at the combine, 40-inch vertical jump, 6'1", 205 pounds, solid frame. You look at, he's ideal size and length for his position. He can execute any coverage that's asked of him. He has exceptional feet for a larger corner, a guy of his size. He really packs a punch. He can jam receivers. He's very physical, can jam receivers at the line of scrimmage. He closes space between him and the wide receiver. He's very fast, so he can close space in a short amount of time. And he doesn't have a fear of getting beat deep. In fact, the longest completion he allowed last year was 28 yards. So just very good all around. I do think his ball skills aren't necessarily elite, but they're still very good. He doesn't really have really, I guess, standout weakness, if you had to say. I mean, he's been tested for multiple years in that Big Ten conference. So when a player like that drops to number 7, you have to take him, and I think the Panthers could use some cornerback help. And this was even more insane. With the 38th pick in the 2nd round, I found myself with safety from LSU, Grant Delpit Jr. One of the best safeties in this draft. I'm going to his scouting. Here we go. All right, so, I really like him. He was probably the best player on that LSU defense. He just reads receivers' routes. He's able to read the quarterback's eyes like a seasoned NFL veteran. He has short area quickness that's needed to be an elite safety. He's able to play the run and come up in the box and play the He's able to come up in the box and play the run, and he's very good in coverage. Pretty fast, not super fast, but good enough. Crazy wingspan. I think he has super ball skills, just an all-around safety. And when a guy like that drops, a projected mid-first round pick, when he drops to the beginning of the 2nd round, I don't know why it happened, but you have to take him. Now I went defensive heavy for the Panthers. I'll run through the last couple picks. Round 3, I found myself, same as you, Michael Pittman Jr., receiver from USC. This came down to he is the best receiver on the board at this time, and I think the Panthers could use another receiver to go alongside. Who do they have? They have, what are their names? Shoot, I'm forgetting. They need another weapon, regardless.
They have that small, quick guy.
A little rusty on the knowledge here, but that's okay.
Right.
And then the rest of the draft, it was all defense. Round 4, pick 113. I went with edge rusher, defensive end out of Florida, Jabari Zuniga. I watched him play a lot in college. He's on the bigger side. He's tall. He's pretty fast and explosive. I think he probably won't be an every down type guy, but you can bring him in on those pass rush situations, those 3rd downs where you need to get pressure on the quarterback. He's on the faster side. He's very athletic. He has upside. I think it's a good pick, good value in the 4th round for the Panthers. And then the last 2 picks, I went with a defensive tackle They had 2 picks in round 5. I went with defensive tackle Jason Strowbridge from North Carolina. And a couple picks later, Davion Taylor, linebacker from Colorado. They do need some linebacker depth. Not one player is going to replace a guy like Luke Kuechly, who did retire. They do need a linebacker. And now looking back on it, I think I could have probably drafted a linebacker earlier, since it's one of their more prominent needs. But given the players who dropped and basically fell in their hands, like Jeff Okudah and Grant Telpit, I didn't really think about it. But Davion Taylor, he's a fast guy. He's not super big, but he's fast. He can cover sideline to sideline. Very good in the open field. Can make open field tackles. He's pretty good in pass coverage. I think he could use some more work in that area, given he didn't get much experience because he is a junior college transfer, and he only had, I think, 1 or 2 years experience at Colorado in Division I. But those were my picks for the Panthers. Very defensive heavy, with the exception of Michael Pittman Jr. So
okay. My next team is the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. With the 11th pick, I got CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma. Just a top off. Just take the top off of defense type wide receiver. Just straight line speed, elite straight line speed. I mean, there's not much more you can say. Really good, just all around receiver. You can just plug him in and slot outside anywhere you want, and he'll have an immediate impact. 18th pick, I took K'Lavon Chaisson out of LSU. Really, just because the Raiders were ranked 25th in sacks last year, I just had to address edge rusher with a guy who's has a really just elite first step.
right.
And you look at guys out of the SEC, it's all elite talent. So I'm kind of biased there. Cornerback, for my third round selection. Oh shoot, that's a 4th round selection. 80th pick. I took a cornerback on back-to-back picks. Troy Pride Jr. and Darnay Holmes. Yeah, I
like it.
The Raiders need cornerback depth.
Yes, they do.
They really just need to plug in just best player available, and that's kind of what I did. These guys. That was kind of my feeling going into these selections. 91st pick. So 10 picks later, I took Kavon Wallace, safety. He's just extremely quick guy. Just really good instincts, and that's really what you need out of a safety. I think you gotta sit him down for a little while and make sure he develops, but in time, I feel like he'll be a starting safety. 121st pick, I took Thaddeus Moss at LSU, Randy Moss's son.
Yep.
I took him like, oh shoot, that's Thaddeus Moss, and oh shoot, they're on team needs, tight end.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to say much more. Like, if he has even a glimpse of what his father could do, then it's worth it. 159th pick, I took guard Kyle Murphy. So mostly just a pretty even mix of offense and defense for the Raiders.
Okay.
Shout out to Connor Larkin, by the way.
Let me get to my next team. My next team, while I'm getting to my little scouting report here, is the Arizona Cardinals. who we were talking about earlier and how they pulled off that trade for DeAndre Hopkins. So their offense is obviously already much improved. But they have the 8th pick in this year's draft. And in this simulation, linebacker from Clemson, you mentioned him earlier, Isaiah Simmons, fell to me at the 8th pick. I watched this guy at Clemson. He can do a little bit of everything. I'm still almost to the scouting report, but he can do a little bit of everything. He has good size. Here we go. Whatever. He's beyond elite athletically. He could probably play cornerback if he had to. I think he can cover in pass coverage. That's probably one of his more, good traits. I think the Cardinals could use some versatility within that linebacking core. His height and wingspan to shut down passing lanes, as I've been mentioned, are pretty insane. I think he's very good closing the gap and in run defense. He's just a solid all-around linebacker, probably the best in this draft. Will probably, when it's all said and done, go top 5 or top 6. But given he dropped to number 8, I had to pick him. My next pick, the Cardinals don't have their second-round pick because they gave it away to get DeAndre Hopkins. But in the third round, pick number 72, I picked offensive tackle from Georgia, Isaiah Wilson. Just a bulldozer, very good in run blocking, can do some of everything. I think he's not very quick. He'll need to work on some of his pass blocking techniques per se, but some more protection for Kyler Murray can't hurt. I think that's their biggest weakness offensively now, is their offensive line. So just some added value there with a guy that's proven and has played against some of the top defensive linemen and defensive ends in the SEC. Round 4, pick 114. They don't have a proven tight end, and so I was able to get Thaddeus Moss again, tight end LSU. He's not going to wow you with his speed, but he's very reliable in space. He has very good hands. He'll catch the ball. He can run pretty much any route you want him to. He's not going to get you a lot of yards after the catch, but he does everything that you want. Good size, good hands, and he'll be a good I think he can develop into a really good number 1 option for them at tight end to go along with all the other weapons they have. And then their second, 4th round pick, they don't have a 5th. They had 2 4s. So with the second, 4th round pick at pick 131, I went with the best edge rusher on the board out of Syracuse, Alton Robinson. Just a tall, athletic player who dominated the competition last year in the ACC. He was Syracuse's best edge rusher. Tall, athletic, has a really good bull rush. I think the Cardinals could use an edge rusher opposite, what's his name? Chandler, what's his name? Something, don't they have a, dang, I'm forgetting so many names. Do you know his name?
No, I don't watch the Cardinals.
It's something Chandler. He came over from the Patriots a couple years ago. But anyways, they could use another edge rusher. He was my pick. So I went inside linebacker.
Wait, Chandler Jones? He's on the Chiefs.
He is? I thought he's on the Cardinals.
No, he's on the Chiefs, man.
No, I'm gonna look it up.
He just won a ring.
No, he's on the Cardinals.
Oh.
He's on the Cardinals.
Okay, who was I thinking of? Okay, I don't know. There was somebody from that was traded from the Patriots on the. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, the point is, they can use a guy who can go opposite Chandler Jones, and Alton Robinson gives them good value in round 4. So Isaiah Simmons, offensive tackle from Georgia, Isaiah Wilson, Thaddeus Moss to give him a good tight end option, and another weapon for Kyler Murray, and then Alton Robinson out of Syracuse. So
nice. Okay, my next team is going to be the Dallas Cowboys, man. Not that many picks. We only have 5. I guess that's a good amount, but we don't have a second-round pick. So I'll just get right into it. In the first round, 17th pick, I went with Christian Fulton out of LSU. We lost Byron Jones. I felt we could have gone with a edge rusher, but I felt their need at cornerback outweighed the need at edge rusher. Since we do have DeMarcus Lawrence, I trust him to take on the sack load for this team. And Fulton, he would just stand out to me when I watched him. 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. I mean, I'm not going to get into all the measurements, but this was just a key team need for me in my eyes. My next pick, with the 51st pick, I chose Ross Blacklock out of TCU.
okay.
He's an inside defensive lineman, or I don't know why it says inside defensive line. He's a D tackle. Another team need. I basically just went all team needs. With all the other teams, I went best player available. 82nd pick, I went with Jonathan Greenard out of Florida.
Okay.
6'4", 4-year player. He's going to be a solid guy to put on the other side with Marcus Lawrence. But overall, you just need depth. As much pass rushing depth as you can get, the better, really. So even if he doesn't make the squad, at least you I don't know what I'm wrong with that. Okay. The next pick, 123rd pick, I went with Courtney Davis, 6'1" player out of Texas A&M. Basically a slot guy, be a route technician, be really solid. Basically a Cole Beasley type. We're in need of one of those types of players for a while now, so I think he'll really help Dak out, and especially in third down situations. We really missed that since Cole Beasley left. 64th pick, I went with safety J.R. Reed of Georgia. 6'1", 194 pounds. There's really not a lot you can really say at this point when you get this deep in the draft.
Right.
Most of these guys are just really solid players that either have a huge injury history or you have guys that are just projects. So this guy, he's a project, but I feel like he's worth the risk. He was a former 4-star recruit, and I mean, it's worth it in my opinion. 179th pick, I went with linebacker Shaquille Quarterman out of Miami. He's a guy that I've watched before. He's a former defensive player of the year out of the ACC. So he just has really good instincts. People have questioned his athleticism, but in terms of his tackling and just football IQ, he's extremely sharp. So
Okay.
I felt really good about that pick.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. I guess since you did your favorite team, I'll do my favorite team. So I'll go with the Steelers. They don't have a first-round pick. They gave it away to acquire all-pro safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, so I'm fine with that. With round 2, pick 49, you mentioned him. I went with Ross Blacklock, defensive tackle, TCU. Here's a guy who I think got first team All Big 12 honors. 40 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks and 12 starts. So pretty good statistics. He lost 25 pounds from his sophomore to his junior season, and it showed in his productivity. He's a big body who can clog the lanes and run defense. I think this is more of a need pick for Pittsburgh after losing Javon Hargrave, who went to the Eagles. You can't pay everyone, but I think I think it's more of a need pick. I think he can develop into a good rotational player with Tyson Alau, who we already have on that interior defensive line to replace Javon Hargrave. But I like his upside. Round 3, pick 102. I went with running back out of Arizona State, Eno Benjamin. I really like him. I watched him a lot in college. Really good body control, very shifty running back. When he gets away, he's gone. He's gone for good. It's going to take someone pretty fast to catch him. I think he's a very good receiving threat with reliable hands, and as we know, if you've watched the Steelers draft through the years, they like to draft running backs with good hands who can catch the ball in the backfield. And the reason I picked running back is just because I'm not sold on James Conner yet, given the amount of injuries he's had, and I think we could use some more depth at that position. And I think Eno Benjamin provides some good value there at pick 70 or pick 102. Round 4 pick. They have 2 fourth-round picks. 124. I went with Courtney Davis, wide receiver, A&M. You already mentioned it. I'm just looking for a good 4th or 5th option for Ben. I think James Washington and Juju are gonna do even better next year. I think Juju had kind of an off year. He dealt with some injuries. I think James Washington is actually the 1, and Juju's actually the 2. I saw some good things from Deontay Johnson, the receiver we drafted last year out of Toledo. I think he can be a solid number 3, and I'm looking for just another guy to take some attention off of Juju and James Washington. Obviously, we got Eric Ebron, and that should help, but he's a tight end. I think we need one more receiver in that receiving room, and he was the best available. And then round 4, pick 135. Yes, I'm drafting a quarterback. That quarterback is Anthony Gordon out of Washington State. I like what I saw from him. Obviously, he put up monster numbers at Washington State, just like Gardner Minshew. But I like him. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. If you're not going to go after one of the free agent quarterbacks, I think we could use to draft one. Just another guy to put in that quarterback room to challenge Mason Rudolph, who I don't think we should keep. And then obviously Duck Hodges, who I guess for the story we can keep him. But I think even though Tomlin and the front office has said they're not going to draft a quarterback, I don't really buy into that. I think it's just, I don't know. I think we could use...
Sorry, who did you think?
Anthony Gordon, quarterback, Washington State.
Okay. That's a solid pick. I like that.
So, bigger guy, good arm, put up huge numbers at Washington State. Completed 70% of his passes for 5,500 yards, 48 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. So, pretty good, but obviously playing in the Pac-12, there's different factors that could,
Yeah, also a Mike Leach offense.
Yeah, it could elevate his statistics, but I think, you can at least bring him in and put him behind Ben. He can challenge Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges, or whoever we have in that quarterback room, and maybe eventually, I guess, try to be the quarterback of the future once Ben retires. So that was my Steelers picks.
All right, nice. My last team is the Denver Broncos. They have the 15th pick, and I went with Jedrick Willis, offensive tackle out of Alabama. This dude is an absolute stud. He ran a 5'1" 40 at 340 pounds. No, 315 pounds. Sorry. I don't know where I got 40 from. But I was thinking of a dude from before. Sorry. Yeah. He's just a beast. There's not really much you could say. He's one of the best tackles in the draft. He'll be an immediate plug-in for this team that needs O-line help. Any and all help for Drew Lock, a young quarterback, it'd be really essential for this team. So, next pick, 46th pick, I got wide receiver T. Higgins out of Clemson.
That's good value.
Yeah, he was a huge surprise to me. I don't know how he fell all the way to 46, but hey, I ain't mad. Obviously, he was the number one for Clemson, and I'm sure many of you know him already, but he's just impressed me with his ability to get jump balls. Obviously, he's played with some pretty good quarterbacks, but you got to be able to win one-on-one battles, and he's shown that ability. So him, opposite of who's that kid out of SMU? Shoot. I know his name. It's just on the tip of my tongue. Oh, dang it! It's like Samuel or something. It's Curtis Samuel or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
We know what you mean. Go ahead.
Okay. 77th pick. I went with the interior O-lineman, a guard. You can flip him around from guard spot to guard spot. Robert Hunt. Really just a team need pick. I may have reached a little bit. Right. He was ranked 88th on the rankings board, but they really needed offensive line depth. So having some young guys in that O-line room, I think, is just essential for this team, so they can just grow together as an offense. 83rd pick. So 6 picks later, I picked Jordan Elliott, defensive tackle. 95th pick, linebacker Logan Wilson. 118th pick, I picked safety Alohi Gilman out of Utah. Here's another guy I actually was really surprised fell to the 4th round. He was really solid for Utah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And with 178th pick, I chose Quintez Cephas out of Rutgers.
Okay. My final team was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Really interesting team. And they had the 14th pick in round 1. And I know obviously the acquisition of Tom Brady and, the weapons they have there already, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But given that Jerry Jeudy fell in my hands at pick 14, I took him. If you watched any college football, you probably know who Jerry Jeudy is. Wide receiver from Alabama. Elite speed, can beat you in every aspect of the game. Really good at making defenders miss for a guy his size. I think he's superb at going up and getting jump balls despite not being the most physically imposing receiver. I think he's just a natural. He has natural hands. He can, he makes catching the ball look effortless. He's deadly in the open field, just like, he's not, he's kind of like CeeDee Lamb in that respect. CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, 1A, 1B, but I think CeeDee Lamb had already gone in this situation. So I took Jerry Jeudy just to top off what they already have. And that third receiver. So give Brady another weapon. So round 2, pick 45. I do think one area they can improve is I think they could use one more running back. And so J.K. Dobbins fell to me at pick 45. And I know it's kind of a embarrassment of riches type thing. But, a player like Dobbins, you watched him in college. His only real weakness, in my opinion, is I think he could improve in terms of pass protection. There were some times at Ohio State where he, got bulldozed or wasn't really great in his pass protection. But everything else, he's masterful in his short agility cuts and jukes and all that stuff. I think his vision is probably his best trait. Really good vision. Able to find the hole. Do everything you want. I think he's going to end up as a feature back in this league. I think he's that good. Natural hands, very good out of the backfield, catching the ball. I think they could use some more running back depth, so that's why I went with him. Round 3, pick 76. I went with a guy you probably don't know. From a college you definitely don't know. Kyle Duggar, safety from Lenoir Rhine College. Division II school in North Carolina. He's really athletic. I think they could use they can use some pieces here and there as we discussed earlier on defense. But anyways, as I mentioned, I think his best trait is his athleticism. He's next level speed. He's pretty good in, I guess, man-to-man or zone coverage, but there is some work to do, but there is definitely some good developmental upside, and he was the best secondary player on the board at this point, so I took him with the 76th pick. I think if that was the pick and it ended up being, I think it could be one of the steals of the draft because not a lot of people know who this guy is. So I think that gives him good value. And then my next 2 picks, round 4 and round 5, I think probably their biggest weakness is the offensive line. I think they could use some more pieces to protect Tom Brady because you have to have – Brady can still be really effective, but you have to have that good, solid offensive line in front of him. So I went with Logan Sternberg, offensive guard out of Kentucky, and Terrence Steele, offensive tackle from Texas Tech. Basically the 2 best offensive linemen on the board at the 2 picks. 1 guard, 1 tackle. Good upside for both of them. Both are really good in the run game. They have some work to do as far as pass protection technique goes, but I like this draft from the Buccaneers. You give Brady 2 more weapons. You get an underrated safety who, if he lives up to his potential, could be really, really good given his athleticism. And then you strengthen the offensive line with good value late. So I like it.
Yeah, solid.
Any final comments? So those were our 8 teams. We did our draft simulation. Any final comments on anything you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to say that in the past that we've done, obviously we've done first round mock drafts,
Right.
and it ended up being a lot of just like this guy has good arm strength, this guy has good hand size, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to switch it up. I hope y'all liked it, and maybe we can make this a series. We can do this for a lot more teams. We still have. We can still do this for a lot of different.
Yeah,
there's a lot of possibilities we can do with this. So
that was only.
let us know.
That's only 8 teams right there. That's only a fourth of the NFL. So
right.
So obviously we'll try to switch it up, and we're gonna try from now on. I mean, obviously that does it for our content as far as sports go for this podcast. But from now on, we're gonna try for one podcast a week. I think that's what we talked about. Likely Friday or Saturday, just because of online school and all that stuff. But yeah, we're gonna try to get you guys one podcast per week from now on. So be on the lookout for that. We'll make announcements whenever that comes up. We'll definitely be back next week with, I guess, more draft content, since the draft is still going to take place despite COVID-19, although it will be in a different format. Players or teams will still pick players, and that's really all that matters. It will give us something to talk about. So we'll be back with more draft content, and then I guess whatever else we decide or can find to talk about. So that's going to do it for today's episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. Again, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Probably tonight, most likely tomorrow. I'll put an announcement up on Twitter when they're there, so you guys can go listen to them. We'll also put timestamps down in the description, so if you want to jump to a specific section, you can do that. So with that, that's going to do it for Emmy Nixon and Michael Ween. I'm your host. This has been episode 40. See you next week. Peace out.
Oh, and subscribe to the channel.
Oh, yes. Subscribe to the channel.
Let's get this video to 5 likes.
Exactly.
See if we can do that. Stay safe out there, y'all.
Yeah, stay safe. Stay quarantined until this stay-at-home order is lifted. Peace out.